Really excited to be here and to talk about prioritization and why we need to have something in place to sort of manage all of the chaos that's out in the world, right? So we need to prioritize because there's never enough, right? I don't know about you guys, I'm constantly feeling like there's never enough time, like there's never enough money, right? My team is never big enough to do all the things I want to do. There's never enough attention, there aren't enough hours in the day. And the only way we can overcome that overwhelming amount of everything that's out in the world is through prioritization, right? And we do it every single day when we get up and we decide whether we're gonna brush our teeth or eat breakfast first, right? We do it when we get to the office and we're deciding whether we should go to that meeting or not. It's part of our lives. But the thing is that most of us in our everyday life have this reactive prioritization system that we use. And it's sort of, oh, somebody put this on my calendar, so I'm going to do this, right? Or, oh, this is blowing up, so I should probably go and pay attention to it right now because somebody's shouting really loudly. But whatever's happening, it's because the world is throwing all of these things at us. And instead of being in this proactive, active stance of things, we end up sort of sitting back and everything's coming at us and we're like, okay, I'll handle this and I'll handle that and I'll handle that. And it causes a lot of stress, right? When I first started at SpotHero, I remember there hadn't been somebody in the role for a while before I joined. And everybody's like, oh, Jenny's here, thank you. Here's this that we wanted to get done, and can you do this? And like, oh, we've been thinking about this for so long, and thank goodness you're here because you can do it. And I'm like, I'm just me. And I've got my team here, and they're amazing, but they're just them. And there's not enough time, and there's not enough money, and like, we can't do all of this, guys. I don't know what to do. And I was stressed out, right? And I was trying to figure out how to deal with this and trying to take deep breaths. And then I titled this End Squeaky Wheel Syndrome, right? Because what started happening is I started to choose like, okay, we're gonna start with this one thing. And then these people are coming up and they're like, hey Jenny, and I'm like, what's up? And they're like, can you do that, like, what's happening with this? And I'm like, I don't know. And they're like, but it's really important. And I'm like, I'm sure it is. And they're like, my KPIs, right? The reason that I'm here to do my job is dependent on you doing this thing. And I'm like, I know it's really important. And they're like, can you do it? And I'm like, okay, I'll try and get this done. And so I sort of made a little bit of room and squeezed this thing in, and then something else gets pushed behind. And so guess what happens? Hey, Jenny. And I'm like, oh, what now? And they're like, so I know you did this person's thing, and that's great, but what about like my thing? And then somebody's sitting in a meeting, and the CEO is like, so what's going on with this? I thought we were going to do this thing. And then somebody's like, Jenny, the CEO said we need this, and it's not getting done, and so can you do it, right? So here I am in this really reactive position. SpotHero is a place where I told the CEO, hey, I know your thing is important, but it's not what we're doing right now. And he said, oh, okay. We're able to push back like that. But in a lot of organizations, and many that I've worked at in the past, especially if that squeaky wheel is somebody higher up in the organization, if you're not getting it done, all of a sudden your manager is coming to you and being like, wait, my boss is asking for this, we need to get it done. Talk about stress, right? I didn't have gray hairs before I started working. But prioritization, it just leads to all of this in our lives. And so, how do we fight squeaky wheel syndrome, right? What do? We bring in a system, a prioritization system, where all of a sudden now you're not in this reactive position, you're not sitting back on your heels, right? You're forward. You're thinking about what you're trying to do. You are being deliberate with your decisions. It's no longer that somebody is sort of trying to take over your life and take over everything you're doing, but rather that you are being the one who's saying, this is what we're doing, here's why we're doing it, here's what is going on. And this, I'm a product manager, right? And one of the main things that product managers do is to prioritize the backlog, right? To decide what are we working on next? But it really is something where whether you're a product, you're a designer, you're a marketer, you're in anything in life, right? Having some sort of system in place can really help you not only sort of take control of your own stress, but when that squeaky wheel comes along, it gives you the opportunity to have that conversation and be like, hey, I am working on this or I'm not working on this. Here's why, right? Here's the other stuff going on. And it creates a conversation and you can then say, so this is what I'm doing. What do you think, right? And then it's no longer, but it's important to me because now they have to be part of that conversation and say, oh, I see why this might be more important than that, and I'm on board and I can wait. This can wait. So when we talk about prioritization and what frameworks and how to choose how to prioritize, I talked about a couple of different things, right? One is what's driving your prioritization. So is it resources, right? Right now I've got my UX designers are really working hard on this project and it's big and complicated, but my engineers are a little bit lighter. So we're going to do this back-end project that opens up some other things in the future and allows them to work on that. And so my resources are for here, but not here. So that's how I'm going to prioritize. You can talk about strategic alignment, right? Our organization as a whole, for one thing, at SpotHero, we've been talking a lot about monthly parking. We haven't had it available on the website for a long while, and one of the strategic decisions this year was that we were going to make sure that we could have it on all our platforms. So last week, we got it launched in our app. This was a strategic alignment decision where we were really trying to follow the organizational strategy. We've got business outcomes. Maybe it's, you want to prioritize based on where you're getting your revenue, right? And so you want to go after the big stuff first, and then the smaller stuff, and then the smaller stuff, and that's really what's driving your decision making. Or finally, I talk about customer needs, right? Sometimes there's stuff where it's more about customer satisfaction, retention, what you're hearing from your user research, and these are the things that are driving your prioritization. And so it's never going to be that one of these things outshines all the rest, right? I hope very much that wherever you work, your strategic alignment and your business outcomes have something in common, that you're not trying to go after stuff that's not going to be making you money or having you achieve your goals as an organization. But it might be that at that moment, one thing is stronger than the other. So which is leading in your organization, right? It's not which is in charge. It's not which is the only option, but it's which is dominant. And that's a really important thing to ask yourself as you're thinking about which prioritization framework, which system to take with you. Another thing that's really important to think about is product maturity, right? If you are launching something that is totally new, that nobody has ever seen before, you want to do things very differently than if you are trying to refine how you are, selling a product where there's a lot of competition in the market, your thing has been around for a long while. You're not trying to innovate and be totally ahead of everything, but you need to make sure you're keeping up with the competition. If you're B2B, if you're B2C, these also change how you choose what prioritization system to put in place. And finally, we're going to dive into some frameworks, right? So I'm going to take a couple of minutes, go through 3 frameworks just to give you a sense of how you might put a system in place, and then we're going to talk at the end about how to actually convince people that this is a good idea. So for the frameworks, the first one is called RICE. Some people call it ICE, and I really look at it best for when you're in sort of a business needs or a resource-driven world. It's a little mathy, but not too hard. But it's an equation, and the idea here is that you can sort of find numbers to fit with everything, and then you add those numbers together and you do some fiddling, and everything gets a score. And the thing with the highest score is the thing you work on first, and the thing with the lowest score is the thing at the bottom of the list, and you work your way down, boom, 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 boom. The equation itself is reach times impact times confidence over effort. And you're like, hey Jenny, these aren't numbers, right? Like, what is reach? So reach, number of customers impacted, right? How big a deal is this? If this is something that's going to be affecting 5 customers, you want to think about it very differently than if it's affecting 500,000 customers. Impact, how much money is it going to make? If it's going to make you $1 million, again, very different from making you $1 extra per person. And this can go also, if you're in a B2B context, obviously this now means customers as opposed to consumers, whatever the case may be, right? Who is actually having this? What is the incremental impact there? And then confidence. And this is the one where it's different places you're going to have to figure out what this means to you. Some places will try to assign a percentage to everything. The way I do it is I say, have we done any user research on this? Have we done any testing on this? Have we done a usability study? Right? Have we done a prototype or an experiment? And then finally, have we actually done a proof of concept pilot in a market? And as you move through each of those stages of the product development, the confidence goes up. And then finally, you divide it all by effort, right? Because if there's $1 million business out there that you can go after, except that it's going to take you 3 years to get there and 3 years to build it versus, you know, $1,000 business that you can go after and it's going to take you 2 days, you want to make sure you're taking that into account. So you put your numbers on all of this, create your score. So, you know, and then you get your score, right? And how you do these numbers is going to be up to you, right? You have to have a talk with your team about how you weigh each of these. There's a whole bunch of extra options to go in here, but I just wanted to introduce this one, which is a very mathematical system. Another one that is very popular is called Kano. It's named after a man from Japan in the 60s who was sitting around and was like, I'm going to go with the prioritization system because nobody here knows what they're doing and why. This one is really nice, I think, when you're more in a strategic alignment or a customer needs world. And it's a little bit strange. It's a 2x2, right? So as designers, right, we all love our 2x2s. And the way it works is that on that y-axis, you have customer satisfaction. So notice it doesn't go from like sad or angry to happy. It just goes from like a meh, like a very neutral sort of thing to happy. Because his thing is like, listen, if you're going to add something to your product, right, if you're going to be building a new feature, it's very rare that your customers are going to be like, you built this thing, how dare you? It's much more likely that they're going to go, you built this thing, I don't care, right? It's not useful for me. So he doesn't say like you should be angry, right? He says just like you should be neutral. And then, but then sometimes you build something and they're like, oh, this is the best thing ever, I'm using it all the time, I love it. So that's your XY axis. On the other side, you have how nice you can build things, right? And if we think about, you know, something very simple like a chair, right? We can build a 3-legged stool, we can have something like this, right? Or we can go all the way with like the Aeron chair. We've got all the knobs and all the dials. All 3 of them allow you to sit at your desk and do work, right? They all achieve the same function, but there's different levels of execution. And so that's that XY axis going across. And so he says, listen, everything you build is going to follow one of 4 lines. And it's going to either be that pink one on the top, where you can really, if you make it really nice, you get a lot of extra happiness for it. It's going to be just totally flat along that x-axis. It's going to be that yellow one that goes straight diagonal, where you make it a little bit nicer, you make people a little bit happier, a little bit nicer, a little bit happier. Or it's going to be something where no matter how nice you make it, people still aren't gonna like it. And he has names for all of these, right? Delighters, indifference, nice to haves, must haves. And what he says here is think about what are, right, like, so you probably want to start with the must haves, right? If you're building a chair and it doesn't have a place to put your butt, it's probably not gonna do the trick. But no matter how nice the chair is, if you can sit in it, you know, you're not going to get people to be like, oh, it sits really nicely, right? So you want to add some delighters. You want to add maybe, you know, it tilts back, or you can swivel it, right? All of those different things. There's going to be indifferent things. A lot of people are pretty indifferent about the color, right? Or maybe there's those nice to haves of like, oh, hey, if we can have the armrests adjust in and out, like that's going to make people happier. We can add that in. One of the things, though, to think about with this is also, and the most important lesson with Kano, is how these change over time. So there's going to be some of these where, like, let's think about cars, for instance. Automatic locking doors used to be a super cool delighter feature, right? People were like, hey, watch this. Boop, boop. It unlocked my car. Nowadays, if you have a car that doesn't have a remote to unlock it, everybody's like, what are you thinking? Like, this is, you know, the lowest thing on the market. So you want to make sure that you're changing your perception over time with repeated user research. What are your must-haves now versus what are going to be, anything that's a delighter now, eventually it's going to become a must-have. So you got to really think about that. But in general, in terms of prioritization, right, you start with the must-haves, you go with the nice-to-haves because those are things that are generally easier to build. The delighters need to be really, really nice in order for you to get that extra value from them, and never build those indifferent things because nobody cares about them. So this is a much looser framework, right? It's much more abstract. There's no numbers. There's not a lot of understanding. There's not a lot of the business needs in here, right? It's much more driven just by your customer needs and assuming that if you really delight your customers and make them happy, then the business value is going to follow afterwards. Finally, I'm going to just talk quickly about desirability, viability, feasibility. This is one that's sort of pulled out from IDEO, right, from the design thinking world. And it's really driven much customer needs, business outcome. So desirability, question, does anybody want this thing? Viability, will anybody pay for this thing? Feasibility, can we build this thing? Right, I can tell you right now that if I were able to build a rocket pack for commuters, a lot of people would want it, right? I think a lot of people would pay for it, even if it were really expensive, because that's cool. Is it feasible? Maybe Elon Musk would say so. I'm not sure I'm going to agree, and I'm not necessarily going to trust the product quite yet. So that sort of gives you an idea. This is a nice blend of that qualitative and quantitative, right? The quantitative from the rice with the qualitative from the Kano, where you can just give each of these a score. So it's really simple to use. You put desirability, you put each of them at the top, and then you're going to sum them up. And if maybe you're in a business where you're really cash strapped, so you want to weight viability a little bit more because you're really concerned about that payment piece, you're really concerned about getting some money in the door, or maybe you're a little bit in a different position, you're a bit more of a mature company, and you're really thinking about the desirability piece because you're trying to stand out in a crowded market. So you can change things around the way you want to, but the basic idea is you just put each idea on the line. You give each one a number. It can be 1 to 3, it can be 1 to 5. Keep it simple. Don't make it too hard, right? Because once you get to 1 to 10, everybody's gonna be like, okay, so what's the difference between a 5 and a 6 again? Right? You don't want to have that conversation. You want people to be pretty clear about what your different stages are. So you want to keep it narrow. Just put each of them on the line. You see, oh look, this one's a 7, this one's an 8. I guess we should probably go with the 8 first, right? And it allows for that conversation to happen. So, of course, like I said, it's about having that conversation start to happen, right? It's about gaining buy-in. If you don't have your team, if you don't have everybody else in the organization believing in your prioritization system, you're still going to get squeaky wheels. They're still going to come around and say, hey, can you build my thing? And you're going to say, well, I'm doing these things, and I've got a prioritization system. They're going to go, yeah, whatever. Can you build my thing? Doesn't work very well, right? You need to actually have people on board. You need to gain that buy-in and make sure that they want to do it, that they want to be on your side for this. And so really what you're getting with the squeaky wheels is people coming in and saying, hey, why aren't you fixing my problem, right? This is that root cause. They're feeling like you aren't paying enough attention to them. And so you need to make sure that they understand why you're not taking care of them right now. They want to feel like a part of the team. And so you need to include them. And so bring them along for the ride, right? First off, don't just sort of take the system and be like, okay guys, surprise, prioritization system, ready to go, I did it, here's everything prioritized and what we're doing next. Because that's going to be well yeah, but you just did it wrong, right? So have a conversation with your team, pick your pillars, right? Remember at the beginning I was saying, talk about whether you're more of a customer-driven organization, a business outcomes-driven, where are you in your business, where are you in your cycle right now, which one of those is more important? Because that's going to start this conversation about, oh, well, we do need to prioritize, and here's how we do it, and here's why we do it, right? Present your options. Whether it's these 3, there's an appendix slide that I'll share on Twitter afterwards, so if you want to look at it, I've got a blog post linked in there that has a list of 20 different prioritization systems. There is no shortage of systems out there, and it's all about just choosing, a couple of them that might work well for you, for your team. But present options. Don't be like, here's what we're doing, and this is that, and end of story. But make sure you have a recommendation in your back pocket, right? Don't be like, hey guys, we're just gonna choose, it's gonna be consensus, because they're good. Like, you need to make sure you're also guiding, that you're leading in this process, right? Make sure that you have a point of view, and be ready to change it, right? Be ready to go with any of the options and whatever you decide, but be their guide for this. Don't just sort of sit on the back seat for it. And then finally, customize it together, right? For each of these 3 systems that I talked about, I mentioned different ways in which you can weight numbers differently, in which you can categorize differently, how you can create understanding. And the point is that you want to sit down with them and see where things are weighted, see how things are done, and make sure that as a team you've customized it together so that it feels like it fits your organization, right? That it's not just something that you read on the internet and you're like, okay, we're doing it, right? But that it's really part of how your organization works. And the final thing that I'm going to say is that prioritization is really hard. If it were easy, we would all have systems in place. It would all be perfect. We'd feel like we're constantly working on the most important thing that we could possibly be doing with our time right now. And I can tell you, even with a prioritization system in place, even with a little bit less of the, why aren't we doing this right now that's going on in my life, I still am constantly worried, are we working on the right thing? Are we going in the right direction? Is this the way, is this how things should be? No system with its numbers or its charts or its graphs is going to perfectly have you working on exactly what you need to be working on every single time. Your system is going to be imperfect, you're not going to work on the right things all the time, and you need to say that that's okay. Because the most important thing is you're moving forward, that you're trying your best, that you are bringing order to the chaos, that you have something in place to guide you. Because I can tell you that an imperfect system is going to be better than a reactive, back of your seat, panic system any day, right? At least there's something going on there, you're thinking through it, and there's logic. And so with that, the appendix, but if there are any questions, I'm totally happy to stick around afterwards. I think that we're going to sort of close out the presentation part and have the questions be informal, since it's a nice group here. Thank you guys so much for listening.